And we are back. Thank you for those very good commercials. Can you believe all those great people up there that you can go and listen to their shows? Great, great, great radio station. I love it. So back to my question that I was going to ask you, Solaris. I myself do channel a light language, a star language, not just one, quite a few actually. And you had mentioned that about that. Now, there's a definite difference between people getting this and people who are getting psychotronically induced talking in their brains, right? I mean, can you give us a more an example between the difference between the two?
Well, yeah. Usually, when you're bringing forth or you're bringing down, drawing down, if you're channeling, you're accessing a radio band. You're accessing a frequency. And usually your higher self, oversoul, superconscious, I know how it works with me. The higher self, oversoul, superconscious accesses a certain frequency and is able to interpolate the data through geometric light languages, which is what our universal spectrum is about. It's about universal light language. It's about geometric light language and frequency and consciousness. So it sounds to me like that's what you're accessing, it through pure spirit, through higher consciousness, oversoul, superconscious. That is really big because you don't want to delegate your power to an entity or a disembodied spirit. Now, I don't believe in delegating my power to any of that crap, which is why I've always done and always worked with higher self, oversoul, superconscious soul extensions, which are soul extensions of who you are as a multidimensional being existing simultaneously in other dimensional spaces, planets, star systems. I know that sounds really expanded, but that's the truth of what we are. And yeah, that's exactly what we are. And that's what you interpolate and bring in through the full light Akashic records. Now, you are able to do this as an advanced being. Old souls can do it very, very easily. When you're inducted into the Covert Intelligence Assault Program, it's very different because they want to use you for something, usually for remote viewing, for being a spy bird, for accessing data that they have a sense you might know something, which, they put me through an interrogation program like you wouldn't believe. And they threw a lot of data at me, but I threw a lot of data back at them. So it was literally going back and forth. But I will say it's very manufactured and very man-made oriented, meaning that the interpolation in their information is so human. The questions are very rigid and human. It just reeks of mortals. It doesn't reek of spirit. So you'll know you're not speaking to anything pure of heart or pure of consciousness. Now, if anybody starts channeling or bringing something in that's not love-based, that's a real red flag right there. You don't want to engage in that. I'll tell you point blank, because the bottom line, chances are it's a disembodied entity or it's part of the induction program.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And the message, you have to pay attention to the message, because if the message is not giving you, telling you that you are a light being, that you're loved, it's definitely not. Also, I have another question about that. One of our people here says, I'm being attacked because I won't stop channeling my star people. It has gotten him to the point where I was forced to ask my people to attack my attackers. So he is in contact. I know him. He's in contact with his himself, basically, and other lives and such, I believe, as well, his higher self. But he also is in contact with someone over there that seems to be popping in every now and then, who is not, in my opinion, for his highest good. Right. So what do you think about him, what he's talking about here with, I'm forced to ask my people to attack my attackers?
Well, I think he's part of that legion of, whatever you want to call it, legion of light, legion of, whatever you would call these beings. If they're supportive of the full light universe, free will, higher self, oversoul, if they're supportive of expansion and consciousness and not trying to shut down, switch off, or abuse somebody, then obviously they're of the light consciousness design work. And sometimes you have to put the brakes on these entities. Sometimes you have to put the brakes on covert intelligence. These guys are out of control. And I'll tell you point blank, the things that they do to people, the horrific things, whether it's remotely brain hacking, sexually assaulting these people, shutting down their vitals, they can cause remote assassination programs to happen. You think I'm kidding me, folks? I'm not. You better hope it never happens to you. I'm telling you, this stuff is for real. The stuff I found out, I didn't even want to know about this technology. I got pulled into it. I decoded it better than anybody could ever possibly decode it, and I know it very well. And I'll tell you point blank, when push comes to shove and somebody's trying to screw with you or try to stop you from being an ascended consciousness being, you have every right to counter their attack. Every right. Whatever means you need to do. And whether that's through the full light universe or whether that's through your celestial spiritual family, remote influencing, you do whatever it takes to stop these people from accessing and controlling you. Because I'll tell you what, Once they pull you in, all they want to do is entrain you, control you, manipulate you, shut you down, switch you off, and make you a slave.
Right. So that brings me to these things have come up all the time in my groups that I have on Google Hangout. A target person, you want them to get out of the victimizing part, and it's really hard because they're going through all kinds of Hades, and it's really terrible for them. But what do you say to them when they say, I can't stop it. It won't go away. And you give them all kinds of spiritual ability, ways to protect yourself and how to, to shield yourself and things, but they don't seem to grasp it.
Right. Well, there's a difference between a regular psychic attack, a regular voodoo hitman, and artificial intelligence, array systems, and directed energy weapons. There's a huge difference. Because once the directed energy weapon, whatever it is, synthetic telepathy, array system, which one, there's many tentacles. It's not the same. Different beast, many beasts. But I'll tell you point blank, once you get pulled into these programs, you're going to have to learn how to deflect it. But a lot of the time, what it does is it interfaces you as a multidimensional being, your four-body system, your vitals. It interfaces every part of you onto their artificial intelligence program, and it actually creates a neural link to a point where you're actually being linked and merged with this artificial intelligence array system. It can be very, very intense, and it basically merges with the electricity of the brain, so that it's hard to disengage because everything you do, it adapts. It's like the Borg. In other words, if you send light, it'll just hitch a ride. If you send a deflective attack, it'll hitch a ride on that. It's a very, what I call, it reminds me of the Borg, to be honest with you. But I've learned how to navigate with this son of a bitch, okay? I've understand what it does, and I know how to screw with it just as bad as it tries to screw with me. And I'm probably an exception to the rule, but I'm extremely stubborn, and I'll be damned if people like this are going to take me down. So I've learned how to navigate to higher spectrums. Now, if you talk to like Dr. Robert Duncan or Dr. John Hall, they'll tell you that you can do this through balancing the hemispheres. Well, I have not heard of one person yet who has been targeted with a directed energy weapon that can clear it. Now, maybe he says he has, but I don't really know. I will tell you one thing: it attaches and feeds off your neural circuitry. It feeds off your electrical circuitry. Everything is electrical in your body. You're a conductor, so figure that one. I mean, I don't have to tell you, everybody, but listen. If you're there and you're getting inducted to these programs and you're trying to separate it, it's very hard to do that. And don't tell me that a taser will do it. It will not. We're talking advanced technological feeds here. We're not talking little woo-woo stuff with little short circuits.
Right. What about the cage?
The Faraday cage, I've heard maybe for some people might work. I've been in all sorts of Faraday cages. Originally, when I was first inducted to a guy who actually built this, I'm not going to say who he is, but he was actually involved in building one of the space shuttles. And he had a Faraday cage office. And it didn't do a damn thing for me. Nothing did anything for me because it's so entwined and I'm so part of the artificial intelligence program. What I've learned to do is navigate beyond it. I do have anomaly signals, and I've talked about those, which are already provable. They're provable, they're measurable. Don't like them, don't want them, like to see them disengaged, but I can't do anything about it just yet. The things are still here. And that's another thing, too. When people get pulled into these programs through anomalous signal activity, a lot of this devious covert intelligence stuff that's going on behind the scenes, the array system is part of that New World Order. I mean, they're literally using that to calibrate people and induct them through entrainment. And that part of the entrainment and induction is through the satellite-driven technology, which will be part of the artificial intelligence. That's part of the entrainment and entrainment camps if people want to go there.
Okay.
Because you're brainwashing people. You don't need to pull them into any type of a FEMA camp. All you do is triangulate them, induct them. And people think this can't happen. You guys are out. You're out in La La Land. Obviously, it's happening all the time. And actually, when you take a good look at what's happening across the board here on the planet, people are acting very, very strange. They're triggered, and they're being psychotic. They're not even hearing anything. They're not even interacting with anything, and they're already acting crazy. So can you imagine when they get pulled into the program?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So it's just basically, if forewarned is forearmed. This isn't fear-mongering. This is just understand that there's a technological beast out there. It's provable technology. There are a lot of us on the front lines have been talking about it. I have experience with it. It's not pretty. It's not your friend. It's not God, it's not a demon, it's not a ghost, and it's not an ancient relative, so you better watch your backs and just be aware. That's all I'll tell you.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, at some time, because you have dealt with this, and I have quite a few targeted people who come to the group, and to be frank, I'm not capable of helping them in the way you could be. Maybe at some time we can set up something where we can have a couple of groups. You'd come in as my co-host or facilitator and give them some ideas of what they can do.
Yeah, I can do that as a co-host. I haven't been helping them either, Miesha, and I'll tell you why. I think I've mentioned this before on other shows, but they literally get triggered so easily. People get so triggered by my energy, it is not even funny. I think I move a lot of stuff in people, a lot. And sometimes it's not pretty and they don't like it. So that's unfortunate. But I'll tell you,
they attack back. They
What's
attack you. So they attack you.
Well, usually they do. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I've reached out in the past to try to help people who were really messed with and completely inducted into the program, and I couldn't help them. And a lot of them, they basically went into a forced suicide program. Some of them just don't make it. Yeah. And, this is what I mean by this is an epidemic. And although people don't hear much about it, but they'll hear like Joe Blow down the road gets, he's mentally ill or there's something wrong with this person. And then later on you realize the person was a targeted individual. I mean, there's a lot of this going on that's kind of cloaked and masked. And of course, mainstream medicine doesn't even go near it. They'll sit there and try to put people on all sorts of meds. And of course, if you know the technology, medication will not work. Okay. If you're really a schizophrenic person, that happens when you're young. It doesn't happen when you're a 40-year-old male or female. It happens when you're young or in the teens. So you can see where this trend is going. But I'll tell you, to screw with the mind and the brain like they do is an abomination and a war crime, which is one of the reasons I am so livid about standing up and addressing this with a passion. Because if people understood what it does to your brain, they would go livid. I mean, literally. And that's why I stand up. But yeah, Miesha, it's really hard to help these people. You have to kind of give them an outlet, but they have to fight it. And it also has to be reported to some degree. I think Dr. John Hall is really doing a phenomenal job addressing it right now. He actually, I think I told you, he has a movie coming out called Targeted, which is based on his, fiance's real experience.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Would you think he would accept some, calls from people that need help?
I think you can find him on Facebook. That's entirely up to him. I know those guys get inundated with targeted individuals, both him and Dr. Robert Duncan. And I'll tell you what, it's overwhelming. I know Dr. Robert Duncan was overwhelmed by the people that were coming and, just trying to get help us, we're suffering, come testify. I mean, it's disgusting, okay? And you have people in covert intelligence who are sitting there, laughing about it, making a mockery about it, saying it's okay to experiment on people. It's not okay to experiment on a celestial being. First of all, you have to take yourself out of the citizen thing and just say, what are you? You're a life form. You're a celestial being. You're a multidimensional design in a matrix. This is a holographic planet. We have to look at things from a real multidimensional design in order to address what's going on here. We cannot address it on a linear scale anymore. The linear scale is destroying people. So that's a real big thing. People have to really expand out of the box that they've been entrained to live in and move beyond the spectrum. I mean, if you understand you're a multidimensional being, it's real easy to access other realms and dimensional spaces of consciousness.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's a big point. Mm-hmm. Before I go too farther, I need to ask a question that was, I'm not sure if it's really involved in this particular one, but are you familiar with the rat brain cell used to fly planes?
I heard something about that, but we're dealing more, that's mainstream stuff. They leak stuff out for people that you can digest, but that's not what they're really doing, okay? The stuff that I was inducted into wasn't about little mice. The stuff that I was inducted into was a hardcore artificial intelligence assault technology program that deals with artificial telepathy. It's actually used in Secret Service beyond Secret Service. You're talking about classified levels of employees who really have access to a technology that can work. I mean, they could be the ultimate spy birds with the technology. So, yeah, I have heard of that. And, yes, you can do a lot of things through mainstream technology. If you look at DARPA, if you want to play catch-up, go look at DARPA and see what they're working on. They're doing everything and anything connected to artificial intelligence right now, calibrating everybody. And everybody's like, oh, woo, this is cool. Well, when they get pulled into the program I was pulled into, you won't think it's so cool. As a matter of fact, you're going to wish you were dead.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. I am not kidding.
Yes, right. So, tell us more about how the music and the
Rush
and everything, how you got inducted into it.
Right. Well, if you go back into my book, I wrote Black Operations in Aries Beyond 52. If you look at my documentary, I cover all this in fine detail. And a lot of people probably heard of this already, but I'd had correspondence with Neil Peart in the past, back in the 80s and the 90s, and then eventually up in 2004 when I was inducted because one of my kickboxing students told me that something tragic had happened to his previous family. So I sent him a copy of my book, Transmutation Through Ascension, which is really a book about spirituality, consciousness. It's a beautiful book. It's real simple on light body and expansion of consciousness. Certainly isn't any threatening book at all. I sent that to him, and that's when everything hit the fan as far as my home being under surveillance within a week's time. Everything, my computer was tapped, my phone was tapped, there were plants in the area, live feed real time, and then I was inducted. live feed real time with my handler, Michael J. Mossbach, Neil Peart, and the members of Rush. The real people, not an illusion. The real people inducted me. Then later on, it was delegated to a covert intelligence program. Michael J. Mossbach was my handler for a while there, for several years out, programming, harassing. The people that created the original program were the members of the band Rush. And I don't care what people say or how they digest it. I know there are a lot of Rush fans out there. I could care less. You guys don't know your band if you don't understand what these guys have been involved in. It's real easy to sit there and assess somebody and say, oh, I love their music. Oh, they're so cool. They're such good people. Yeah? Well, try being inducted into their covert intelligence assault program and the artificial intelligence program, which is based on synthetic telepathy, which Neil Peart has been involved in for a very long time, by the way. That's what he uses for his surveillance with Michael J. Mossbach, who calls himself his personal ghost. That's his ghost. In other words, it's his person who basically not just shadows him in energy, but actually is interconnected live feed real time with the communication system. The same one I heard, with these guys, live feed real time. I was pulled on tour with them for several years. Then I turned them in. I had to testify against them in court in 2006, which was my handler's idea, by the way. So, it was real ugly and disgusting. And, of course, life goes on in the illusion. The band's still playing, they're still touring, and they're still making their money, and they're still manipulating. And Peart has a lot of ruined lives under his belt, and nobody will ever know the better because nobody's paying attention. But let me tell you something. I have the facts out there, and they're not skewed, and everybody knows it who has any access. So, that's where it stands with these guys. And for anybody who understands that what this induction will do to you, it ruins your life. You want to talk about getting burned. You want to talk about getting your life taken away, your family getting it taken away. You're getting recalibrated into an artificial intelligence design, a transhumanism design, without you signing off on it, without your free will saying yes. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. So, I can get pretty passionate about it because I hear a lot of smart alecks out there trying to dispute it. There is no dispute. These guys are guilty. End of story. They paid the judge off, and they have the illusion of fame and fortune to cover their tracks, and they've done that very well. But as my lawyer said, they've won for now, and that's it. For now, they've gotten away with their crime.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Miesha, if I'm a little passionate about that, but I'll tell you what.
You have a right to be.
I had a wonderful life, okay? I was not interested in covert intelligence. I was not interested in all this BS. I was not interested in anything pertaining to what's going on right now. I had a life. I had a family. I had a career. I had a profession. And they took it away, and they perpetuated it. And they've left me with an anomaly signal that is remotely accessible and hackable, which can take my ass out any day of the week. And, of course, I fight it. But I'll tell you right now, no. People need to understand this technology, and they need to know the parties involved. And the bottom line is, if that band was innocent, they would have come forward. Trust me. They would have come forward instead of hiding and laughing about it.
Well, of course. Absolutely. So do you think there's other bands out there? If there's one, there's got to be a lot more of these that are doing the same.
Oh, I know there are. I can't say for sure, but I do know that this is a technology that is as accessible because it's used for surveillance work. It's used for... If you're very famous and you don't want a cell phone and you don't want a walkie-talkie, then you have interconnection with the artificial intelligence and your live handler, which basically in Peart's case, it was Mossbach. He's his live handler, real time, tells him where to go. The artificial intelligence, it's like a little GPS. So you don't need a radio. You don't need a cell phone. And it's really good for secret. You want to talk about Secret Service and covert intelligence programs. This is the ideal system. It works. There's no doubt about that. It works. But when they're trying to pull people in for induction, whether it's for a Manchurian candidate or a mannequin, monarch, or it's for whatever it is that they're trying to recruit, possible PSYOP. I know that I talked to Preston Nichols about some of the stuff back in, 2006, I believe, on Maui, and he said that he was pretty sure they were trying to recruit me for PsyCorps and from some other things. The bottom line is I don't like to screw with people. I'm a counterattacker. In other words, I don't mess with people, but I don't tolerate people messing with me. But I'm not going to go into a work or profession or a control room where I'm ruining people's lives every day and I'm getting paid really well to do it, and I don't care because I don't have a conscience. I can't live like that. That's not my style. That's why I turned these people in, because I knew exactly what they were doing, and I wasn't going to be participating with it anymore.
Right.
Even if they were training me, which they did, by the way. Trained me very well.
Yeah, this kind of thing can happen to people when they're young, just because they like a band and they get involved, and before they know it, they've they
don't understand. When I was young and I was listening to rock concerts, I like rock and roll. I love music. I grew up in a musical environment. I had no idea Peart was a creep. I used to basically contact him all the time. I would send him some stuff that I wrote, because everybody said I wrote like Neil Peart, so I'd send him off some stuff I wrote, and he'd send me postcards back. So the correspondence started in the 80s and continued on until the 90s, and then I just disconnected from him. Life moves on, people change, people shift, and I didn't realize what had happened to his family, but I'll tell you right now, I do know that his last family was taken out by the communication system. I know exactly what happened to his last family. I know how it was covered under the carpet, and I know he's perpetuating that crime, and he can deny it all he freaking wants, but I know his dirty little secret. And of course, I think that's one of the reasons that there's I don't know, I don't really want to say it, but I mean, there's a reason that there's this animosity going on right now. Let's put it that way, because I know more than I should.
Yes, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Well, let's see. There's a question here about music, or actually it's a little bit more of a comment. They think that 90% of American music has been involved in satanic occult. It's not sure what is behind the music groups are, but he's thinking it's like black magic and such.
Well, I do tell you, and I can tell you just from my own induction experience, when they inducted me Live Feed Real Time, they were actually creating albums, which was the Snake and Arrows album. That was the Live Feed Real Time album they were doing with me. So I do know that a lot of their technology was interfaced with me being with them real time. I do know that they use a lot of overlays insofar as the way they create songs and how there's subliminal, whether it's a frequency, a transmission. If you had known me back in 2004, when I was interfaced with Mossbach, you would see and be able to detect a lot more clearly the communication system because it was really in your face and loud. So I wouldn't discount the fact that some of the stuff can be picked up with certain equipment and technology that's actually being broadcasted, say, through an album. I do know they remastered all their albums, and I think they've covered all their tracks on a forensic scale through the technology itself. If you notice, Rush has remastered just about every single album. And that's not by accident, by the way.
I never liked Rush.
Well, you know what? I didn't realize that they were this kind of people. I had no idea Pierre was like that. But I always got a weird vibe from them, and now I know why.
That was it. There's some bands that I just get some real weird vibes of, and when I hear their music, I got to turn it off. And it could be some of my own, mind control training that it hits.
Well,
and so I turn it off.
Well, all people have to do, Miesha, is look at their albums. Start with the very first album of Rush. Listen to their lyrics. Listen to what they're saying. And it's not that they're saying, oh, look, everybody, you have to stand up and fight transhumanism. No, Peart's telling you ahead of time he's involved in this. And he's involved in the artificial intelligence program. It's the same program he pulled me into. It's based on artificial intelligence and synthetic telepathy. He's been with it. He's been interconnected with it for a very long time. There were things that were said live feed real time that only he and I and the band members and Michael J. Mossbach knew that were relayed on the Rush album. Only us would have known that. And Michael, like I said before, I saw Michael in person. We talked in person. He admitted the hearing. What we call a hearing is the communication system, by the way. I mean, there were things that were admitted, okay? This isn't a fantasy. These guys knew it, but once again, they'll sit there with a smirk on their face. Mossbach leans over and looks me in the eye and says, I'm in your head, and then walks away and lies under oath in the courtroom. And my lawyer, who's ex-NSA intelligence, let me also add, knew he was a lying piece of shit. Excuse my French. I don't mean to swear. I'm sorry about that, but you understand what I'm saying here. We're all watching this guy walk away. And we're all knowing he's a criminal, okay? And now we have people that are trolls that like Rush music. Oh, heaven forbid your favorite band member is involved in this technology. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but they are. And maybe one of these days they'd stand up and be counted, but I'm not going to hold my breath because it's been 12 years of my life taken away. Yes. That's way too long, Miesha. That's way too long to be a hybrid of a technology that I should have never been involved in.
Exactly.
I am a hybrid. There is no doubt about it. Make no mistake on that one.
So I would like to take you back before that happened. I know you are like a major computer. That's how your brain works. Was it the same back? I mean,
I've always been fast. I've always spoken fast. I always speak fast. But also, I'm a second-degree black belt. I taught martial arts. Very, very fast twitch muscles, very quick, very, very speedy. I've always been like that energetically. I don't do drugs, don't do alcohol, athletic. Trained all the time in jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts. I was state kickboxing champ. You're talking about somebody who had a career and a life with a wonderful husband who was also a black belt. We trained together. We had a good life. So, yeah I was really switched on. And when I first, and actually this was back in 2004, and I had just turned 40 years old, to be honest with you. And I mean, right then, that was like the prime of my life ripped away by these guys. And